Hello, everyone. Welcome to Random Encounter 320 or 320. Well, it has only been 2 weeks since our last episode, and the world is now a very different place in a great many ways. We now finally know that the Switch 2 doesn't just exist, it is coming out, and it has games. Maybe not some of the games we were expecting, maybe some games that we never expected in the first place, but it has some games. So today we're going to be talking about that. We're also going to be chatting about another recent game. And joining us today are Dom.
Hello. Glad to be here.
And Zach.
Hello.
Okay, well, as I stated above, there's recently been an event that happened, frankly, that caused me and much of the rest of the world a great deal of anxiety and pain. We all knew it was coming. It doesn't make it any easier to deal with. I thought about avoiding the topic completely today, and I didn't think it would be fair to our listeners. And honestly, it wouldn't really be fair to myself. This is something that I need to face as a reality and not hide from it. I am, of course, speaking about the re-release of the remaster of Saga Frontier 2. Yes, there is a new Saga game. Markets are falling. Instability is at an all-time high. Square Enix should have known better than to mess with the world economy like this, but here we are. Oh, God. To be 100% honest, I've been so overwhelmed about everything that I just decided today. I just said, this. And I started a brand new playthrough of Chrono Trigger. I might as well retreat into being a 10-year-old again.
I mean, that's a great place to retreat to.
That's a reasonable crash out.
I mean, like the first time I played Chrono Trigger, like my stepfather was dying and like it was the thing that grounded me. So I completely understand.
It feels so good to play.
Yeah, it's so good.
It's so good. It's one of those games that, thank God, you play it and you're like, nope, not nostalgia. Still as good as it was back then. And I'm playing. I decided to not play the original. I'm playing. I got into some fan hacks recently. I played a fan hack of Final Fantasy VI called Brave New World a couple of months ago, and I just loved it. It was Final Fantasy VI. It just added a bunch of new content that fan created, but like super lore friendly. So I'm doing Chrono Trigger Plus, which is the same idea. It's still Chrono Trigger, but a lot of fan created content, and they put some cut stuff back in the game, and it's just giving it a slightly different flavor, something new to look forward to.
I've heard really good things about that. I mean, you get to play as Glenn at some point too, right? Like I think it's very cool what I've heard about it. Yeah,
they actually built in that if you kill Magus, the curse is broken and Frog becomes Glenn again.
Yeah, which is the only reason I could ever think to kill Magus. So yeah, that's awesome.
I know. That's going to be, oh geez, I have to make that choice. Ooh, I don't like having to make that choice. I don't like that choice at all. Anyway, so yeah, we're going to be talking about the actual reason for all of the above that I just listed, along with the Switch 2 news. But right now, I want to talk about something that is considerably less controversial, that no one has an opinion on: AI. I'm kidding. We're talking about the recent Souls-like AI limit. So, Dom, you played through this. The trailers presented it as kind of, well, frankly, another Souls-like. And there are a lot of Souls-like out there, Souls-likes out there nowadays, including, the Souls games themselves. What made this game different once you played it for you?
Well, at a surface level, the most obvious thing is like the aesthetic style choice. I was surprised because Code Vein was like the big anime Souls-like in 2019, I want to say. But I was surprised to see that AI Limit was like the first big anime Souls-like since Code Vein. So that immediately stood out to me as well. So and AI Limit also has like a bunch of gameplay systems that it's its own take on some of the Souls-like formulas, mainly from Bloodborne, I want to say. And I think one of the really great things about AI Limit, in fact, was its level design, which I thought was really meticulously done, especially for Souls-like. Because Souls-likes, in my experience, tend to copy like the vibe and like the gameplay, but they never quite get like the actual traversal of the world quite right. And I think AI Limit on that part like really nailed it, and like they really paid attention to how the world was like set up and like how players would traverse the world.
Well, another big difference here is, frankly speaking, the entire setup itself. This is science fiction, not it's not fantasy at all. So what's the setup here? What's the story?
So the setup for AI Limit is that like a mysterious substance called like the mud started bubbling up, and it began to take over the world. And of course, it leads to world ruination, and people have found refuge in a city called Havenswell. But of course, eventually the mud begins appearing in Havenswell, and the city that was once a safe haven falls into ruin, and you wake up as a blader, which is like a human android hybrid, and you have amnesia, of course, and you're tasked with repairing branches, which isn't like a metaphor for anything. It's literally just like tree branches that you find sticking out of the ground. And you're tasked with essentially repairing these to find out the truth about Havenswell and to also like regain your lost memories. And that is like the main conceit of the game.
Okay, you mentioned, we'll talk about the level design in a bit, but you do mention Bloodborne. And frankly speaking, Bloodborne, there have been a lot of Souls games, a lot of FromSoft Souls games as well. But Bloodborne seems to hold a special place in a lot of folks' hearts. And here, the main piece of the combat system is very much inspired by Bloodborne's. I believe the rally mechanic, but here it's called the sync rate system.
So so Bloodborne's one of Bloodborne's big mechanics is the rally, where you can recover some of the health that you've lost if you play aggressively enough. And like that's usually signified by like a slightly like an orange bar in your health bar. But AI Limit instead takes that, so you don't recover health, and instead you have to manage this thing called sync rate. And at higher sync rates, your character, everything's good. Your character deals more damage. Your spells get like special damage boosting effects from that, and everything's fine and dandy. But at lower sync rates, you're instead like punished, so you deal less damage. A lot of your defensive spells begin to lose some of their like functionality. So I don't think like, for instance, they have like a parry, and that costs sync rate to use. But if you fall underneath like a certain threshold, I don't think like you get reduced parry frames, or like the parry just doesn't work properly.
Oh, geez.
And below 40% sync rate, you can't even like use your offensive spells at all. So that's just like completely just not even an option. So it's like it's interesting because it is like a different way of trying to like encourage player aggression, because you get so nicely rewarded for maintaining a high sync rate. And like the game does provide a lot of tools for you to do so. So like there's no stamina for you to manage, for example, and you have like a pretty nice combat dash with a lot of invincibility frames from what I can tell. But the moment you slip up, or the moment an enemy like hits you and like it chunks like 30% of your sync rate, and you begin to fall low, it becomes like really difficult to stay aggressive and try and regain that sync rate, because then like you deal less damage, so enemies have more opportunities to hit you again.
Yeah, it sounds like it creates a cycle of where it becomes almost, from what it sounds like, it becomes almost impossible to recover from a mistake.
Yeah, it's like it's a bit too feast or famine, and like in order to recover safely, you kind of just have to back off for a bit, which I think kind of goes against the spirit of like the gameplay the AI Limit's trying to offer. I feel like just having like if they had like HP recovery as well, or if they had some alternate ways of like recovering sync rate passively, beyond just like waiting it out or using like a consumable, I think that might have been better. But as of right now, it is a little bit too feast or famine.
Yeah, I imagine that would be very, very frustrating, especially in a game that is, like you said, is supposed to encourage active gameplay and getting right in there. And oh no, okay, I guess I have to retreat or die. That kind of you're right. I imagine that it literally fights against its central mechanic. Yeah,
like if your sync rate hits 0, you get stunned. So it's like a guaranteed death sentence.
Oh, so it stun locks you. That's useful.
Yeah, and the weird thing is they have skills that like help you maintain. So like they have a skill that completely gets rid of the sync rate cost for trying to parry. So parrying costs 10% of your sync rate bar, which you do recover if you successfully parry, I think. But they have an item that you unlock later in the game that gets rid of the sync rate cost for parrying, and that makes it so much more palatable. And I'm like, why isn't this just like a default of the skill to begin with? Because like you get punished enough for missing a parry anyways, because you just get hit. So like, why further punish the players by then like wasting their sync rate?
Well, enemies are an important part of, obviously they're an important part of any Souls-like game, but one of the things that you mentioned here, and I think this dovetails nicely with what you were saying about brilliant level design, which is enemy placements being extremely, extremely important. So although the level design is amazing in this game, it sounds like, unfortunately, enemy placements drag them down a fair bit.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So the last like real big Souls-like game I played before this was Lords of the Fallen, and in that game, I also mentioned that like enemy placements. I'm not sure how they fixed it now because I know they patched the game a lot since I reviewed it. But when I played it, it was terrible. Like every single encounter was like 5 or more enemies, and they all deal super high damage, and that really turned me off from the game. But like AI limits, it doesn't go to that extreme, but like they'll put like a medium-sized enemy that like you really have to like engage in a proper 1v1 with, and then like there'll be some enemy that was like crouching in the corner behind some boxers or something, and it'll just like pop up out of your screen, and then all of a sudden it's a 2v1.
Yeah, it's cheap.
Yeah. Or like the ranged enemies, they'll charge up attacks, but you don't get any visual or audio cues that they are doing that. So you'll be fighting them, and then all of a sudden you're hit with like an explosive crossbow bolt, and you're like flying off the edge of the map. And there are so many times this happens. Like a couple of times I can understand, and like From Software is no stranger to this as well. Like placing items on a ledge and then having some mob jump out and like push you off the ledge. Like there's always like a couple of those. But in AI Limit, it's like it's so pervasive, and like I usually try and kill all the enemies on the map the first time I go through at least. But here, like there are times where I'm just like, okay, I just have to run through this. I don't really care. I've been trying this for like to clear these 2 enemies for like 6 or 7 times now. I'm just wasting my time, and there are too many times this happens.
That's too bad.
Yeah, and like it's weird too because like the enemies themselves are like really nice 1v1 encounters, and like I think they really do show the best parts of the sync gauge and like how engaging it is to like really try and like keep your aggression high and like maintain a high sync gauge. But then like the second mob joins in, and like that entire thing just falls apart. And yeah, it really shows how like level design really does consist of like multiple things coming together. Like just because the world traversal is good doesn't mean it's like a fun level to go through if the enemy placements are bad. And like I feel like AI Limit is a pretty big example of that.
The the enemy placement's obviously a pain, but these do tend to be the foot soldiers. Let's talk about the bosses, because bosses do tend to be the bread and butter of the Souls-like games, because that's where a lot of the challenges. You need to learn their patterns, you need to learn their attacks, you need to really dig down and figure it all out in order to, well, survive. But you do mention that bosses in this game are a little bit easier than you might expect in a Souls-like. Why is that?
I think one of the big parts of that is like the bosses just don't have high enough health pools. So even if they do have really aggressive or kind of like difficult play styles to like properly engage with on like a first try, the bosses have such low health pools. If you can get one parry off, it knocks off like 20% of their HP in one go, especially early on. And that makes it so like you kind of just don't have to engage with mechanics that much. And it kind of makes sense because a lot of the bosses do get introduced as like elite mobs, not even like later on, more like in like starting from like the mid game. A lot of like bosses get you see as just regular elite mobs. And it's weird because so they're super aggressive when you're in melee range, but the moment you really back off to the range where your spells are still effective against them, but like they don't really have a direct way to attack you, like it becomes quite easy to deal with them. And like I noticed this especially with like the last couple of bosses. They were like quite tough as like a melee character, but the moment I just respect a little and I just had like spells going, they were kind of just like pushovers, if I'm being perfectly honest. And it was weird to see bosses just have so little agency versus like ranged damage.
That's a really weird choice to have in a Souls-like. The late game bosses, do they get a little bit harder?
They do. So a lot of the bosses, especially there's some hidden bosses that I think are quite fun, that have super high damage and very cool movesets that are unpredictable and do require you to learn. But I think they all still fall under like the same trap. So I think the only bosses that don't fall under this are the ones that actually have like teleports built into their moveset, because they can actually like close the gap. But bosses that don't, and like required to like and are required to just like physically run or like dash to you, they still fall like pretty heavily to range damage.
It doesn't sound like they quite landed the bosses and the toughness of learning the patterns, etc. Let's talk briefly about another major part of a Souls-like, which is your build, and how you build your character and how you spec out your character. So you mentioned in the review that the build variety surprised you. So what exactly did you do? What playstyle did you end up settling on, and why did you do it?
Yeah, so I was surprised because so weapons come in different classes, and all the weapons surprisingly have like their own unique like special attack that costs some of your sync gauge to use. And I was just surprised that like even though a lot of the weapons within like the same class share the same move sets, I was surprised at how much the weapon arts mattered in like in creating a play style. So I used a lot of really so I usually lean towards faster dexterity based builds on my first playthrough, which a lot of From Software fans do not like because they are, or at least the ones online, because they like their heavy strength builds. But in AI Limit, I found myself really gravitating towards like there are a lot of weapons that have the heavy weapons really have cool like AoE attacks, and they cover like a super wide range. And I think that kind of just fit better with especially with how like enemy encounters are designed. Just being able to tackle multiple enemies at once really sort of narrowed me down into that play style. And the spell variety is also actually quite good because a lot of the bosses drop unique spells. All the spells feel very powerful, even the ones at the start. So even though it's not quite viable, I think, to have your character built entirely around spells just because of how it's resource gated, I was surprised at how much of like a part of gameplay they still made up. I would say like easily like 30 to 40% of your gameplay is probably going to consist of like range damage.
Well, let's pivot now to talk about some of the presentation, because I'm looking at some of the screenshots and it looks pretty damn cool. So first off, we'll talk specifically about the visual design of the game. You mentioned that, I mean, it looks great, but you do mention that there are a few issues, especially with a few NPCs and human enemies clashing with the general aesthetic of the game.
Yeah, so in general, I think the animations for like during cutscenes for the human NPCs just doesn't quite hit. You'll have like hair and like clothes clipping, and like it's not a big deal usually, but the game also makes a point to like zoom in on my character faces for like dramatic effect, and then to just see like the hair clipping happen at that point is like quite distracting. And the facial, like the mouth moves while they're talking, but the eyes don't quite emote enough, so it feels very wooden in that regard. And I get like what they were trying to do with like the framing and the composition of cutscenes, but the acting just isn't there from the game characters. If you get what I mean.
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
Yeah, and the main character obviously has like the most work put into it. It's very obvious that like Arissa, your main character, has the most detail put into her character models, and the human NPCs very much just feel like, you know, they just feel like faceless goons number X, or like number 9,000. They don't really feel like they have even like half as much work put into them as like Arissa in terms of like modeling detail or like expressiveness, and that's especially like I think like hair or like a hood covers their eyes like all the time, so like that further sort of emphasizes that.
I imagine that's a way to save a little bit of money on facial animation.
And like so there are like cybernetic and like more like abstract like monsters in the game, and like they don't suffer as much just because like their silhouettes are more interesting, but it's like very obvious with the human enemies. And I feel like as well, like the levels, something about like how the levels and like the characters are like shaded, or the lighting, it's like the characters feel very much anime, but the levels don't quite reach that level of stylization. There's like levels feel oddly realistically lit and like textured still. So the characters like really pop out of the environment in like, I don't think a particularly good way. And if I'm being a little bit harsh, I feel like it almost feels a bit like a mobile game at times with how hard the characters pop out of the background. Like, and yeah, I just feel that the art direction is like it's getting there, but it's definitely, I don't think, one of the stronger points of the game.
Yeah, what I'm getting from this conversation and what I got from the review is that you kind of had a bit of a love-hate relationship with the game. Whereas there are a lot of strengths here. It's not a bad game by any means. You gave it an 80. An 80 is a great score. And you really enjoyed it. But at the same time, there were very, very clear things that drove you quite nuts in the game, like cheap deaths, people jumping out at you, that kind of thing, mobs, the weakness of the enemies, things like that, which really did stand out to you. If you could fix anything in this game, like you have to pick one of these things to fix, what would it be that would, let's say, jump this up to like an 85?
Oh, if they overhauled the enemy encounters and got rid of a lot of the cheap, like pushing you off a cliff kind of deaths, I think this could easily be like closer to a 90 even. But that is just like such a huge part of like why I cut a lot of the score as well, and why it is sort of a cautious recommendation, because enemy encounters are such like a big part of Souls-likes. I mean, as they are for like any combat game, but I think particularly so for.
That's a real shame. And it's also kind of weird that wasn't picked up in QA. It seems like that could have been like okay, people keep falling off a cliff here. Maybe we should not put an enemy here. Because that's a moment of frustration. And perhaps if we eliminate it, we can eliminate a little bit of, just a little bit of friction there.
I mean, if you can look past, if like stuff like this, like you're just used to it at this point and like it doesn't really bother you that much, I think AI Limit is like a perfectly fine pickup. And like it's a very enjoyable 20 hours otherwise. But yeah, if like you're really tired of like gank fests or like not well thought out enemy encounters, then AI Limit, I think, is a very pick up on sale type of game.
Well, I mean, to be honest, picking things up on sale is probably going to be a very important thing to do in the future. Well, thank you, Dom, for playing through that and reviewing it for us. I really appreciate it. We're just gonna discussion question is going to be the majority of the episode today, because there is a lot to friggin' talk about, and that, of course, is the Switch 2. So RPG Fan, we had a lot of coverage about the Switch 2 on the site. You can go on to rpgfan.com, check that out. Our news team did an amazing job of keeping up with everything, getting the stories out. But here are some of the details, if you would like to hear them here. So the Nintendo Switch 2 is set to launch worldwide on June 5th, 2025. It is currently priced at $449.99 USD. The hardware enhancements as compared to the original Switch, it features a 7.9 LCD screen with a 1080p resolution. The dock outputs 4K at 120 frames per second, at 120 frames per second, 256 gigabytes of internal storage. You can also expand it with micro SD express cards. So like a pretty substantial hardware upgrade there. It's also just bigger, which is great when you consider the Joy-Cons. Rather than the little click that you have, now the Joy-Cons are magnetically attachable. And the weirdest thing, which is really, really cool, is there is mouse functionality. You can like tilt it on its side and you can use both of them as mice, just like you would, a mouse. There is also a bunch of new stuff. Nintendo has invented Discord. They have game chat now for the not the first time ever, but it might be the first time it actually works. You can get there by pressing the C button on the right Joy-Con. And we also had some announcements like there's going to be more Nintendo Online content, GameCube content specifically. We're finally getting the Wind Waker on the Switch, but it's not the one you probably expected. F-Zero, GX, Soul Calibur 2, lots of things like that. Some of the games that are coming out for this that we expected are some enhanced versions of Switch games. So we're getting like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom Switch 2 editions, which feature improved graphics and improved performance, and a bunch of other things too. There's a lot of controversy about video games now in terms of the game cards. Some games are going to have physical editions. Some games are going to have physical editions that essentially just come with a key card that allows you to download it digitally, but there's no actual information on the card, which is weird. But I can almost understand it. We are getting Bloodborne 2. Sorry, no, we're getting the Duskbloods, which is a PvPvE multiplayer action game. It's slated for 2026. It's FromSoft. Speaking of FromSoft, we're getting Elden Ring Tarnished Edition, which is a really stupid title to name something if you are releasing it on hardware that is not as powerful as any other hardware, because they're going to say, yeah, it sure is the Tarnished Edition. But it looks pretty good. The graphics, it looks like Elden Ring, which obviously could not run on the Switch. Big news for RPG fans. Deltarune Chapters 3 and 4 are coming out, along with the first two on the Switch 2 on June 5th, 2025. They'll also be available on other platforms. So if you have played the first two and you want to play Chapters 3 and 4, just download it on whatever you want. We're getting Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, which is surprising, but it looks pretty good. We'll see how it looks. We're also getting Cyberpunk 2077 Ultimate Edition. So if you had any doubt that this thing is a more competent machine, the fact that we're getting Final Fantasy VII Remake and Cyberpunk is a pretty good indication of that. We are getting something I'm excited about is Yakuza 0 Director's Cut, which is offering an expanded version of the game. A former GC, a former staff member who I wrote the Yakuza So You Want to Get Into Yakuza piece a few years ago, posted something very interesting on Blue Sky, which was a good point, which is the director of Yakuza 0 is no longer there and has nothing to do with RGG Studios. So it's not really a director's cut now, is it? It might be a director's cut, but it's not the director's cut. We're also getting Bravely Default Flying Fairy HD Remaster. I'm so excited about that. And other things like Switch 2 has backwards compatibility, sort of. There's a list floating around out there of games that aren't yet compatible. And obviously, there's backwards compatibility, too, with much of the hardware of the old Switch, including the Joy-Cons. Although they can't connect to it, you can still use them as Bluetooth controllers, and you can use the old Pro controller, too. Let's talk about some of the controversy for a sec. Before we get into the big thing that is worldwide, let's talk about the controversy about game pricing. So they announced that some titles, such as Mario Kart World, which I didn't mention this because it's not an RPG, but it's an open world Mario Kart game, which is a crazy concept, which I think is amazing. They're priced higher than previous games. Mario Kart World is at $79.99 USD. This has caused a lot of, I'm hesitant to say the word fury, but close to that online. As a Canadian, the idea of paying $80 for a Switch game is not exactly what I would call weird, but the United States just hasn't. So it's a weird thing. Dom, you're in Korea, right?
Indeed, I am.
Yes, I assume that the idea of paying. Actually, what approximately? You're much closer to Japan than we are. What is the game pricing like there?
So for a lot of AAA games, I think the premium AAA games are roughly around 80,000 won. So like you can roughly think of it as like $80 more or less. So
around what you would expect.
Yeah.
Okay. And Zach, as the the token American on the show today.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on $80 Nintendo Switch 2 games?
It's hard for me to talk about my opinion outside of like my experience with what I think is the primary market for the Switch, which is children. I will say like the direct hit at 9 a.m. my time. And so like my kids, I'm teaching during the day, and throughout the entire day, and all my kids know, like most of my students know, like what I do in my free time, which is this. And they're all like, what is this? I'm not doing that. I'm not paying for that. Like over and over and over again, I heard the refrain over and over again that I'm not paying for that. Now, the reality is for me, like my wife works for Nintendo Life. So we're going to have a Nintendo Switch to day one. So it doesn't impact me one way or the other. I actually really don't care. It's like, it's $100 or it's $20 here and there. It's first party, probably for the most part where it's going to happen. But I think the problem is, and it's going to get even worse as we go into our conversation, is they have a fundamental PR problem in that the main reason that the Switch is so well selling and sells so well is in many ways the same reason that the Wii sold so well, because it markets to families, it markets to particular niches. But teenagers, they're not down for $80 for a game. They're not down for $450 for a console, and we'll get into that. And they're certainly not down for, just sort of being overpriced in general. And they don't actually care. Most of my students don't give a crap about graphical fidelity. They care about price. They're more into indies than any of us are. And people underestimate that. More of my students have heard of Undertale than have ever heard of any Final Fantasy. And so I think Nintendo is interested now. They keep marketing themselves with hardware here, and that's not their market. And I think that I honestly think, and we'll get more into this, that we're looking at a Wii U situation here, and it concerns me over the long term.
What occurred to me when I was looking at Nintendo's response to this is they really should just rehire all of the people they apparently fired doing crisis management for the Wii U, because they could use some of that experience right now, because their response has been terrible. Like it's been really bad. It's been really bad. They've been trying to go down the route of ignoring the problem, pretend the problem isn't there. And that is not a great way to handle it.
Yeah. And I might be wrong here, but I think that they don't understand the assignment. They could have made it less powerful, honestly. And I think that would have been better for them. And they could have made and priced it lower, and that would have been better, honestly, on the long term.
I don't disagree with you. I also think that, first off, I think that Rockstar is just delighted by this news, because it means they're going to get less when GTA 6 comes out.
$100, yeah.
Because Nintendo's moved that window to the right. I'll tell you something, though, that has occurred to me. And I agree with you that I really hope this isn't another Wii U situation. And we're going to get into the tariffs in a second and the delayed everything. But I think Nintendo made a utterly spectacular mistake not releasing this in 2024. Oh my God, they made a big mistake. In retrospect, I mean, obviously they didn't know what was going to happen in the election, and nobody knew that actually expected this to happen, what is happening. But in retrospect, if this thing released last year, and they could have released it last year, they've clearly been sitting on this thing for quite some time. If they released it last year, they might have had some of this controversy, but they certainly wouldn't have gotten the controversy that we're about to talk about, which is, of course, worldwide tariffs. So Canadians and Mexicans have been living with this particular sort of Damocles hanging over our heads for the last couple of months now. You'd think the rest of the world joining us would give us some sort of comfort. It doesn't. It just makes it even more terrifying. In the case of tariffs, massive tariffs have been put across the board at pretty much every single country in the world, except for the two that are the funniest not having tariffs on them. I don't mean funny, haha. I mean funny. Oh, isn't that funny? The problem here is, of course, that this got released. Prices are going to go way up in the United States, and Nintendo just announced on the day the tariffs were announced the price of the Nintendo Switch, and people are already angry that it's too expensive. So Nintendo actually canceled pre-orders, delayed pre-orders in the United States from April 9th to an undefined period in the future. Presumably they're retooling the price, and I sincerely doubt they're not putting that number lower. And I think that this has caused, first off, it's caused a reverse radicalization, as far as I can tell, with Nintendo fans who have been drifting to the right over the years, because they're pissed. They're really pissed. And let's just dive into this. Zach, hey. Hello, hey. American friend.
Hey, I didn't vote for Trump, I promise.
I would have been a little more than surprised if you had, and certainly if you would come out and just said it now. Yeah, the last couple of days have been pretty, let's just say, wacky. I realize that you are getting a Switch 2 regardless because of the circumstances that you're in. But I think this is going to kill a lot of day one purchases. Actually, I think it's going to kill most of day one purchases if this thing comes out at what I think it's going to come out as.
I mean, I think the reality is like $450 is probably too expensive to begin with. Obviously, if they raise the price, people are going to buck. There's a larger conversation to be had here about game pricing. Like I paid $85 for Lufia 2 in 1996. And so like games being expensive is not a new thing. But like I think that also from a broader perspective, like the real problem is that the tariff on Vietnam right now is 46%, which is an insane number. But that's actually where most of the Nintendo Switches are developed nowadays, because Nintendo moved their production from China to Vietnam during the first Trump era, because they were trying to avoid Chinese tariffs. Now, I will say this, like apparently from what I'm reading, and I spend way too much time reading about politics, it's not healthy. It's really bad. Don't do it. Anybody who's listening, that Vietnam and the United States are in negotiations right now to where it looks like maybe that number might get moved to zero. But that is as of this recording, which is on a Saturday when this episode goes up on a Sunday or on Monday. So like, I don't know what's going to happen. And that's the whole thing, right? Like none of us knows what's going to happen. You never know what's going to happen, but right now you really don't know what's going to happen. The
only people who don't know what's happening more than us are the people who are going on the air on behalf of President Trump and saying what he's thinking.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So part of me like wants us to feel that pain. Like 50% or however many Americans voted for it. Like this, he promised tariffs. He's not doing anything he didn't say he was going to do. He's just a lot more effective at it now than he was 5 years ago. And so like you voted for it. Here's what you get. Obviously that is not positive for me personally in any way, shape or form, but
I'm not sure effective is the right word, but yes, I know what you mean.
Yeah. Effective in he's actually implementing the policies that he promised. Whereas last time he was very ineffective because I don't know. I don't want to go all the way down that rabbit hole. My point is that like, I don't know where things are going to go. My honest suspicion is that Trump is smart enough to realize smart is maybe the wrong word, but
he watches enough news to realize
that like he's going to need to come to some sort of a compromise with Vietnam. And if I had to actually make a prediction, I would say that the price is going to stay the same.
Yeah, but I mean, for Christ's sake, he put like Taiwan has tariffs on it. Now, first off, the fact that the United States officially recognized Taiwan at all is mind-blowing. I don't imagine China's particularly happy about that.
Or anything else about this, but yeah.
Or anything else about that. But like, it's like, you're kidding me. The first time the United States government admits that Taiwan is a country is when they put tariffs on them? Okay, that's mind-blowing and something that no one's talked about yet.
Like they also put tariffs on like uninhabited islands and stuff.
Oh, the penguins.
Yeah, so it makes you wonder who's doing the double checking, if anyone's doing that at all.
I'm assuming Grok is double checking ChatGPT's work and vice versa. It looks good to me. Yeah, this is everything about this is a goddamn nightmare. I do feel quite a bit of sympathy for Nintendo, though. Like, I can't. They probably had this plan for weeks. I do not understand why they didn't just say, you know what? Let's take the hit. Let's move it up. Let's announce it on April. Let's announce it on April Fool's Day. Screw it. Let's just announce it on April Fool's Day. Let's not announce it on the same day the tariffs drop. That was a remarkable show of lack of PR and basic, just common sense.
I mean, I agree, but like, I don't think anybody expected almost 50% tariffs on Vietnam, unless you were in the Trump administration. I mean, it's
certainly not Vietnam.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bad. And I think, you know what, Zach, something you said a few minutes ago that I've been steadily rejecting until very recently, which was this is going to end up being another Wii U. I mean, people have been saying this for long before this thing was announced. People have been saying this is just going to be another Wii U. They're going to announce the Switch 2 or the Super Switch, whatever it is, and it's going to be so similar to the previous console that no one's going to want to buy it, and they're not going to know what it is, etc. And I think that people have a fundamental misunderstanding of why the Wii U failed. But in this particular case, I am getting much closer to the idea that this might just be a Wii U situation, because Nintendo already created a lot of controversy with the pricing originally, and add the tariffs on top of that, and you are going to end up with some you're going to end up with something that I don't think a lot of people are going to be able to buy on day one. This is going to, I really hope this isn't a bloodbath for Nintendo, because I love Nintendo. And some of these games look astonishingly good. Like the Donkey Kong 3D game, it's first 3D Donkey Kong since Donkey Kong 64. Like, oh yeah, give that to me. If you're not going to give me a Mario game, give me that. Love it. Love the idea. Love the idea of an open world Mario Kart game that's wacky and insane, and I'm totally there for it because I love Mario Kart. But like, I can't buy that. Okay, well, first off, in Canada, this thing is already $630 plus tax. Like, that's just what it is, and I suspect that's probably what Americans are going to end up paying too. But I mean, like, not for nothing for my country, but it's like, okay, yeah, I hate the fact it costs $630, but our dollar sucks. So yeah, of course it is. And there are some people online who are like, haha, Americans are going to know what it feels like now to be Canada. And I'm like, well, not really. They're going to be paying more, but for a very different reason, although God knows the dollar's dropping. I think that this is going to be a bad year for any tech launches whatsoever. It's definitely going to be the worst year for Apple for iPhones in ever, probably. Like, what the hell are they supposed to do?
I mean, they're rich enough that they could just take a hit, I think. But
well, they are. But like, they're going to have a $2,300 iPhone,
right? I mean, my iPhone 14 is just fine right now. Yeah, and I think that beyond even any of that, like, I also think that like they have a software problem. Like Mario Kart World looks cool, but like at the end of the day, like it's Mario Kart, and people will buy it, and over time it will generate revenue, I'm sure. But like, other than that, like, why am I buying a Switch 2? So I can play Metroid Prime 4 when it looks better, so I can play some games that would still run better on my PS5. Like, I can't believe they don't have a 3D Mario.
I'm stunned by that too. I guess they decided to make a calculated risk and give us a 3D Donkey Kong and think close enough. But
it's not.
It's not. Like, it's really funny. If you look at the big successes of Nintendo over the years and a lot of the failures, you gotta launch with either a Zelda game or a Mario game. Like, it's an insta buy. People will buy the damn system just because they want the new Mario or the new Legend of Zelda.
Or Smash Brothers. I mean, even like an upgraded Smash would like have been something. Like, I don't understand. Like the PS5 can launch without a lot of software because people know that stuff's coming, and like the user base is very different.
Also, Sony does what is the old Sega does what Nintendo don't. Sony does what Nintendo don't, and the perfect example of that is the Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, where Nintendo was just like, all right, I'll just make Astro's Playroom. Why not? But this time I'm charging for it. Like, their tech demo that teaches you how to use the system, you have to pay for it. Like, that's
when I was a kid, I got Super Mario World boxed in with my Super Nintendo. I mean, it's crazy to me.
I mean, back in the day, it was a system seller, literally. The fact that you got the new Mario game with the system, absolutely. And if I recall my history correctly, the fight that Sega of America had with Sega of Japan over packing in Sonic with the Genesis was like, it was a huge fight, and it was the right fight to have because that was a system seller. Now, admittedly, it's a very different market nowadays, but still, the fact that there's no Mario game and no Zelda game in sight, aside from the enhanced editions of Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, and the GameCube version of Wind Waker. Like, for God's sake, at least have like another version of the Wind Waker HD remaster or something. Release that on it.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, and I mentioned this earlier, like, my wife works for Nintendo Life, so she went hands-on with the Switch 2, and she, from a hardware perspective, was very impressed. Like, she thought Metroid Prime 4 at 120 FPS was just, like, incredible. It was, like, mind-blowing, amazing, and she really enjoyed her time with it. But, you know, it's like, from an RPG fan perspective, like, I can buy some maybe upgrades of some games, but like, there's no Xenoblade 2, which released early in the Switch's life. There's nothing. There's nothing. There is not a chance in white hell that I would be buying this system for a long time if it wasn't coming into my household otherwise.
When I think system sellers, I think actually a system seller for RPG fans, I honestly think would have been a new Bravely Default game, Bravely Default 3. The fact that we're getting a HD remaster of the original one is, I think, super exciting because I adore the original Bravely Default. But again, it's not a system seller. It's like, all right, I played that. I will play it again when it comes out in HD. But like, Bravely Default is such a fascinating game because once you know the twist, a lot of the tension is gone. I still love it though. God, yeah, I'm really worried about this system. Like really worried about this system. And the thing that I've been resisting is I remember what happened when the Nintendo Switch got announced. And it's so funny how people memory hole reactions. When the Switch was announced, people were not positive about it. People were saying things like, "This is the next Wii U. It looks exactly like the Wii U. This is the same. Oh, it's a portable and it's a at-home console. This is terrible. It's not going to work." And it worked beautifully. And people, because it's a success, people forget when people say it's not going to work when something ends up working. So I was resisting saying that this thing is in trouble. I think this thing is in trouble.
I do too. And again, it boils down to, I to be honest with you, I think it boils down to Gen Z, and they're going to be the consumers that are moving into it. And again, like 15 to 17 to 18-year-olds, the kids I interact with every day, the gamers I interact with every day, and also the non-gamers, to be honest with you, like it's the kid who plays Stardew Valley on their Switch. Like every single one of them is complaining about this. And that's not going to go away anytime soon.
Here's a question for you, Zach, because you would have noticed this more than I did. Was there a single child in the entire Switch 2 Direct?
I not that I saw.
I saw a lot of young adults that were hanging out, talking on the chats.
I mean, I guess they're technically Gen Z, but they're young. They're going to be aged out of gaming by the time this even comes out. Sorry. So yeah,
I appreciate what you're saying, but I'm like, you're right. At the Switch, Nintendo's target market, yes, older gamers and people like us, we love Nintendo and we have deep-seated love of Nintendo that goes back to our childhoods. But at the same time, it's like, Nintendo, you're not hardcore. You're like the console that kids love. You're the console that parents buy for their kids. And I don't remember seeing a single kid in that entire presentation. Yeah. And I was like, you should be featuring your target market a little bit. Okay, here's one last thing. I agree with you, Zach. I think Metroid 4 could have been a system seller. I think Metroid 4 could have been
if it wasn't also on the Switch.
Exactly. And it wasn't announced a couple of days before this. What a bizarre choice to make. Like, I understand that they want to say, no, it's also on the original Switch. It's on the Switch and it's on the Switch too. But it's like, you could have put that out in a press release after this thing was announced in the Switch 2 Direct. And it would have made a huge splash, and people would have been like, "I got to get the Switch 2 because it has Metroid 4 Prime."
Yeah, I mean, I don't work in marketing, so I don't want to comment too much on those things. But like it so much of this is baffling to me. Like I think that they misunderstood the assignment and that they fumbled it badly. And it might be successful, but it won't be because they did this well. They screwed this up one way or the other.
Yeah, like Zach, I worked in marketing for 6 years. And 7 years, I can't even remember because it sucked. I hate marketing, but I do understand it. And no, you're 100% right. And there are a lot of people out there, cripes, I can't remember their names, but I saw it was a YouTube video. It was two former, I think they were Treehouse hosts, or like they were Nintendo employees that basically had the job of spinning this thing. And they have their own YouTube channel now. They don't work for Nintendo anymore. And basically they were like, what the hell are they doing? Like, this is weird. This is it's so strange. Like, did they have anybody from their PR and their crisis management whispering in the ear saying, you got to do something? Because they're apparently not. Anyway, I realize that we're being super negative about all this. I apologize, but it's really easy to be negative about this. The only thing, as I alluded to earlier in this podcast, is genuinely it seems like this may have actually knocked some of the stupid out of some of the younger men in their 20s. It turns out the only way you can make these people care is to attack their pocketbooks, which, oh my God, has he ever. But it seems like there has been some reassessing of, shall we say, support for certain platforms on the right. And the stock market obviously has been crashing to a degree that it hasn't since the early days of March 2020, when incidentally, guess who was the president? God, Jesus, yeah. It's not a happy scene. I wish that I could be more excited about this. I was excited when I saw the initial. I think it was a pretty good direct, actually. But unfortunately, I think this has been hampered by self-inflicted mistakes and then further kneecapped by mistakes that no one expected.
I've been talking with some of my friends too about this since I'm technically Gen Z, and like with my friends, and it's really like the double whammy of like the $450 console, which is like almost like, why am I not buying a PS5 at that point? And the $80 games. I feel like if it would have been either or, it might have been more palatable. But like with both of these, it's like all my friends are like, nope. And especially like you said, without a Zelda or a Mario game to really, really sell the console, everyone's like, I'm like, all of these games run better on my PC or PS5, or like they're going to be released in 2026, like the Duskbloods, which a lot of my friends are also really down about because it's not the traditional Souls-like formula. It's leaning more into the multiplayer system. So it's like a lot of unconventional games, a lot of remasters for games that probably won't run as well on the Switch 2 anyways. And yeah, just like the frankly absurdly expensive price, which like the $80 cartridges, I think in Korea is going to easily be like over $100 to spend in terms of like for Korean currency. And it's just not very palatable for the majority of us.
Yeah, same here in Canada. I mean, our dollar isn't dropping to quite the same extent as other dollars, but it is going down. So like our buying power is dropping, and it's going to hurt. Because I don't know if game prices have actually been announced in Canada. I think they have, but anyway. Yeah, and like this is okay. Let's be very, very specific about this. Everything we've talked about here is clearly a symptom of a much larger sickness that is going to cause untold harm in the future. I'm not even talking about the stock market dropping. Yeah, the stock market dropping. People say that the actual economy and the stock market aren't the same thing. And you're right. They're right. It's not. But the stock market usually is a fairly decent barometer for how things are going to go in a couple of months. And holy crap, the amount of pain that is probably going to be inflicted on a lot of people who don't deserve it, both in America and out. I think the Switch 2 might be the least of our worries. All right. Well, that was a delightful conversation that we just had. You know what doesn't suck? Our merch. We have a shop. I have absolutely no idea how tariffs are going to impact our shop, but we have one. It's still there. You can find it at www.rpgfan.com/shop. We have our collaboration with Hyperplay RPG, the RPG Fan Review Card Collection. It's a showcase of nearly 300 of our review cards, as you can see on Instagram. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. Really worth taking a look through it because you're likely going to be able to afford these games. So if you're looking for something new to play, good resource. Another way to support us here at RPG Fan is to check out the past episodes of our podcasts. So for Random Encounter, last week we chatted about the latest entry in the Assassin's Creed series, Assassin's Creed Shadow. We also talked about David Reardon's latest game. It's a deceptively simple, cozy game called Wonderstop. And if you are not tired of political nonsense and things, I would appreciate it a great deal if you checked out our Canadian Encounter episode of Random Encounter that aired a few months ago. I was very, very proud of that. We also have Retro Encounter. Last week you guys talked about, I think, the RPGs that made you the gamers that you are today. Yeah,
we talked about 2 RPGs that really defined our tastes and then like one non-RPG, and it was a good time.
Cool. We also have Rhythm Encounter, which is RPG Fans Music Podcast. And last Monday was another one of our quarterly music updates. This is a new thing that Mike and Hillary have been trying, where it's instead of having like a panel on to talk about their favorite picks with a theme, instead they're listening to some of the newest music out there. So it's a really, really great way to keep up to date with, well, what's hot in the RPG and adventure game music scenes. So check that out. If you'd like to get in contact with us here, you can fire me off a message at podcast@rpgfan.com. If you have any ideas for discussion questions, preferably cheerier ones than we had this week, please fire them off to me. I'd love to hear them. If you'd like to send me an email directly, you can do so at jlogan@rpgfan.com. You can also find me on Blue Sky at jonologan.bluesky.social. I'm not the only person on this podcast who has an online presence. Dom, where can we find you?
You can find me easiest on the RPG Fan official Discord under DH Canny.
Cool. And Zach?
Probably the best way is email, zachw@rpgfan.com, but I'm also on RPG Fan's Discord as Zach W.
Cool. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your friends to help us get the word out there. You can also rate us on iTunes or your other podcast players of choice. Dom, Zach, I really cannot thank you enough for joining me on this episode today and for talking about something that we usually don't talk about. And look, I know gaming is political. It has been political forever, and certainly since Gamergate. And
everything is political.
Everything is political now, but it's like, oh, good, my hobby now is directly intersecting with the thing that makes me want to cry. So thank you very much for joining me today and talking about it and plowing through that. I was really, really happy to hear both of your thoughts.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Beautiful. And for everyone out there listening, whatever you're playing, have fun.